Hi everybody and welcome to the Flute Practice. Today we are going to be looking at the head joint position and we are going to kind of be checking in whether or not your head joint position is really serving you the best. Now this is very useful for beginners, but I think it's also going to be very useful for any of us who are changing our position or maybe considering that we might need to or want to. This is kind of a follow-on video from the Rockstro video that we did. So if you haven't watched that, I do recommend you go watch that first just to get an idea of what we're talking about here, what these kind of debates are all about. Let's go check it out. Okay, so we kind of like hit another wall in terms of like two opposing schools here. So there are some players that kind of like argue for covering more of the flute hole, and other players that will argue that you must cover less of the flute hole. Once again, you know, like part of these debates, I think it's quite an amazing thing because we all are such unique players and we do all have such a unique sound that it kind of makes sense that we fight about these things, because if we didn't, we'd all sound the same and we'd all just be in agreement and it would be very boring. I'm going to give you like bits of both, so I'm going to just show you or let you hear hopefully what the more turned in position sounds like, give you some of the pros and cons of both systems, and I'm going to once again let you guys decide. So the turned in sound is quite focused, quite sweet, quite kind of pure, a little bit darker. It's really beautiful. So quite narrow, but very focused often. And often it's very easy to get some of those higher notes because, you know, the airstream is not very far away from the kind of next harmonic. So often is quite a lot easier to get those higher harmonics. The open sound, so the more turned out sound, you will get a little less of that immediate focus. We have to work harder to find that focus. And we get a bit more brighter, you know, more open, warmer sound. Of course, the pitch is going to be different now because obviously I'll tune slightly differently depending on how I play. Now, the more turned in sound, your low register notes are probably going to be a bit more tricky. You'd have to turn out a little bit for them. As well, it's a little bit more difficult to get some of the colors and the sound, like tone colors that you want. You have a little bit less kind of variability in the sound, a little less kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like flexibility. There's a better word. It's probably going to come to me soon, and then I'm going to be like, that one. The open sound, the more open sound, you've got a lot more possibilities in terms of the tone colors and the sound. You've got a lot more leeway to kind of change the sound and go still to that smaller, more turned in sound. So if I am there, you know, we can still play around with it. Whereas if your default position is more turned in, it may be more difficult to get to the more turned out sound that quickly, just because it takes a bit more work to focus the tone and find that more turned out sound. Okay, the other very big and very important pro of the more turned out sound is volume, just sheer volume. The more open we are, often the bigger the sound, the further the sound will go. Some of you might debate me and argue me this too, but like, you know, that is really my experience. The more turned out we are, the more projecting and open the sound. And of course, if you're playing in an orchestra, if you are especially a first flute player, or you're needing to be heard, you're needing to play over an orchestra, you are going to really want every possible tool in your bag that you have as a flute player, because newsflash, this is not the loudest instrument in the world. It's quite soft compared to the rest. So personally, I prefer the more turned out sound. I think there's a lot more possibility with the sound. I think there's a lot more projection, a lot more tone colors, and so on and so forth. But once again, this is my personal preference. I cannot tell you guys how to play, obviously. Okay, the reason why all of this is so important is because you need to decide how much of the tone hole you do want to cover and where you want to be, because this is going to decide how you can line up your instrument. Now, this is actually a method that Trevor Y apparently also teaches, which is always great to see when stuff that you're doing or teaching kind of matches up with somebody else. So basically what he teaches is to find the hand position first. So what he says is that you should first find a position that feels really comfortable. And one of the key things that he mentions is that the keys of the flute should be pointing directly up to the ceiling, that they are not leaning backwards. That's really, really, really important. We spoke about this in the rockstro about, having the keys kind of more over that way. This is one of the things that I really do feel that rockstro has so right. And it doesn't have to necessarily even be over so much. That way, I think once those keys are pointing up to the ceiling, anywhere kind of past that, you are safe. Once again, you need to kind of explore what feels comfortable in your hands, where you really find that balance and that comfortable position, and really spend time doing this. And in fact, with my beginners, the first thing we do, we don't just pick up the flute, we actually sit with the instrument and just find the hand position in both hands first, just to really feel comfortable with this. Then what you do is you bring the flute up and you find the comfortable position here. Now, you make sure that those hands and those keys are up, and from there, you will turn the flute and you will turn the head joint. So you're making sure this flute position stays the same where you're used to having it, and then you turn the head joint until this feels comfortable. This is a really, really great system. You can do this with a teacher or with a colleague or with somebody that you know who can help you with this, because I think we let the two kind of influence each other too much, and then we feel comfortable here, and then we end up having the keys kind of falling backwards and so on and so forth. So I really like this approach of first getting comfortable with the balance in the hands and then turning the head joint accordingly to find that position. If you are playing too turned in and you're trying to play more turned out, your hands are going to want to influence you in the beginning, because they are going to want to pull that flute back to where it's used to being. So unfortunately, it's one of those things that's going to feel really uncomfortable and horrible for a while. You may want to just take the head joint, just go back to your head joint, just practice on only your head joint, finding that focus, finding the sound, really finding the more turned out position, finding more focus in it, so that you can just get used to this new feeling here first, and then add the hands, and then you will find your little position. Now, absolutely one of my favorite little things that I learned from one of my teachers when I was studying overseas is once you have your position, or you're relatively or reasonably sure of a position that could work, mark it. Best system, just some good old nail polish. You will see there I have like a tiny little spot there. I also have a little spot on my head joint where you've got just the mark with nail polish. Sorry, that black ring is not nail polish, that is just some tarnish. So that you have the two little spots nicely marked, and you can put it together. If you then change the position, you can just, it literally scratches off. It's really easy. I have to redo it sometimes because it actually scratches off. So you can redo it and you can put it back. There you can see I've got the two little points that match up like that. So I've got the nail polish there and there. And from there, if I need to readjust, at least I know where I am. So if I am now saying, okay, my new position is a little bit more off to the side, at least I know that. If you are really comfortable with what's going on here, but your hands are not doing, the correct balance, then you can do the opposite approach. So you can basically position it here, find the good spot here, and then watching here to make sure these keys are pointing up to the ceiling and aligning it from there. This could also work, especially if you are very set and secure here already. This might be another approach to find a good alignment. I just want to mention that, I've also played around with my alignment quite a lot. As far as I could see, I was looking at it earlier, I am pretty much lined up the sort of traditional way of the tone hole lining up with the keys, more or less. This doesn't have to be, it's going to depend on your body shape, your body posture, on everything. I think the important things are the balance in the hands and how open or closed you are here. Is this really what you want to be doing, or are you just doing it by default? Those are two important questions to answer. If default is your answer, then you really want to investigate and consider carefully how to change these things. I really, 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 really recommend working with a teacher together. If you don't have a teacher and you do want some extra input in this, I have got services available on my Patreon page. You can go check it out. But I think that it is absolutely essential that you don't try to do this all on your own. Sometimes just that external pair of eyes, even if you are already a professional, is very helpful just to give yourself a reference point. So that is my advice. Guys, I hope this is helpful for those of you who are navigating this kind of weird space. Ask questions, let me know what problems you're having below, and I will try and help as best I can. Until then, everybody, happy practicing and see you next time.